Hey, this is Coach Anderson, Mississippi Public Broadcasting Online, U.S. History from 1877 to present. We're going to start today with Standard 2, the Gilded Age. Now, what we've been doing, of course, is going through and providing you with some insights about the U.S. history map assessment. And one of the things that we've tried to impress upon you is how important it is that you do your absolute very best. And what we're going to do is give you some highlights on the Gilded Age to give you some of the high points in terms of what you need to know. And we're also going to include a fact list that you need to also make sure that you can kind of master so you can do well when it comes to the map assessment at the end of the year. We're going to start with the test blueprint, and as we were telling you in previous lessons, the one thing that we want you to understand is that when you look at the map blueprint, where you want to make sure that you pay some attention is in the first category, the second category, and the third category. In other words, all three categories. But the one that I want to point out to you says approximate weight. What that does is it tells you the standards that receive the most amount of attention when it comes to the test assessment. And if you look at contemporary United States, the reporting category, and then the standard objectives 10, 11, and 12, those are one where the bulk of the test, of course, will come. Now, what we also want to do is introduce you to the standard and the objectives, of course, that will be tested when it comes to the assessment. Today, we're going to look at U.S. History Objective 2, Mississippi Standard Industrialization, Analyze Industrialization and its impact on the United States in the late 19th and early 20th century, and then it has 4 supporting objectives. What we're going to do is look at the Gilded Age. Now, the Gilded Age is that period in American history right after the Civil War up until around 1900 or so. It is the post-Civil War American period of wealth accumulation and corruption, characterized by the enormous wealth disparity of a few robber barons and the American worker. It was a term that was created by one of our, most well-known American authors, Mark Twain. He wrote this essay of sorts, and what he basically talked about was an America, of course, that was gilded in gold. In other words, it looked like gold, but if you dug beneath the surface, you would see some things that weren't very, very pretty. All right, the American Industrial Revolution signaled the shift from an agrarian America to an industrial society. Workers shifted from the fields to the factories. Post-Civil War Southerners and immigrants made their way to the cities, causing urbanization, of course, to start. So what we're telling you is after the Civil War, no longer is farming going to be the #1 employer of people. It will be the industrialization and factory work. All right, the rise of railroads. And we told you the rise of railroads had a whole lot to do with expansion. It also has a lot to do with industrialization because the railroads is what is used to facilitate, markets, movement of products to markets. The expansion of the railroad network was a foundational aspect of industrialization. Railroads not only facilitate transportation of goods and people across the U.S., but also created national markets for raw materials and finished goods, fueling industrial growth. Here are 2 of our most important inventors, of course, during the early industrial period. The upper left to what you have, of course, is Thomas Edison, and down the bottom you have Alexander Graham Bell. The late 19th century saw a wave of technological breakthroughs, including the development of the telegraph, the telephone by Alexander Graham Bell in 1876, and electric power with Thomas Edison's inventions like the light bulb, all of which spurred industrial and commercial growth. Urbanization, once again, because of all of those jobs in northern cities, we're going to find that people from the South after the Civil War would make their way to the North to find jobs. And we're going to find that immigrants are going to see America as a land of opportunity, and they're going to flock to America through Ellis Island to get to those industrialized jobs in the northeastern part of the United States. Industrialization led to the rapid urbanization as people migrated from rural areas to the cities in search of work. Cities like Chicago, New York, and Pittsburgh grew rapidly, during this time becoming centers of industrial activity. Overcrowding, poor living conditions, tenements, crime, pollution, etc. were the products or the byproducts of urbanization. Immigration and the workforce. Immigration played a crucial role in fueling U.S. industrialization. Immigrants, particularly from Europe and Asia, provided cheap labor for factories, railroads, and mines. They formed the backbone of the workforce, though they often faced discrimination and exploitation. Child labor also fueled American industry because of the lack of child labor laws and the lack of compulsory education. Here in the background, you see Ellis Island, which was the processing area for immigrants entering the country, where they would be given physicals. And if you didn't pass that physical, of course, they could put you back on the ship and send you back to where you came from. And where were you going to really go if you sold everything so that you could buy a ticket to come to the United States of America in the first place? The growth of big business monopolies. On the left up here, you see John D. Rockefeller on the top, and then at the bottom, Andrew Carnegie. They were characterized as robber barons in that they were able to amass great fortunes, usually at the expense, of course, of their workers. Large corporations and monopolies, including those led by figures like John D. Rockefeller from Standard Oil and Andrew Carnegie. Carnegie still dominated entire sectors of the economy using horizontal and vertical integration to consolidate control by eliminating competition in the workplace. The master of horizontal consolidation was John D. Rockefeller. What he basically did is he was in the oil business. So he took over smaller, weaker oil companies and formed them or folded them into Standard Oil. Andrew Carnegie believed in vertical consolidation. What he would basically do is he would take over any business that could help him with his steel production. It may be a railroad, of course, to help him transport his finished steel products. It could be mines, what had iron ore. So vertical consolidation means that you take over like businesses that can complement your production, and then horizontal is where you take over like businesses, both of them which were used to eliminate competition in the workforce and in the marketplace, and they became very wealthy at that particular endeavor. The rise of corporate finance. The increasing complexity of industrial enterprise requires substantial capital or money that can be used to create these huge businesses. One of the biggest investment bankers or venture capitalists of that particular time was J.P. Morgan, of Morgan Chase fame. I think you've probably heard of that bank we're still around today. Labor unions and workers' rights movements. Now, we told you that people like Carnegie and Rockefeller, they became very wealthy, and usually at the expense, of course, of the working person. And we're going to find that throughout this Gilded Age, we're going to find that labor unions will start to form to fight for workers' rights. As industries grew, so did the labor force, leading to the formation of labor unions like Terrence Powderly's Knights of Labor, who would take any unskilled labor. Samuel Gompers, of course, created the American Federation of Labor, which would only take skilled laborers. Workers began to push for better wages, work conditions, and hours, culminating in strikes in Haymarket in 1886 and Pullman in 1894, which ultimately led to violence, which caused most people to distrust unions. So because of the violence associated with them, a lot of people in America during this time didn't want to have anything to do when it came to labor unions. Laissez-faire economics and government policy. Now, people like Carnegie, people like J.P. Morgan, people like John D. Rockefeller, they believed, and most Republicans at this particular time believed in this laissez-faire economic policy where the government basically kept its hands out of business and left it basically unregulated. The government largely adhered to the policy of laissez-faire economics, allowing businesses to operate with minimal regulation. The environment of minimal government interference encouraged rapid industrial expansion, but also contributed to exploitation, including child labor and dangerous working conditions. So if the government takes a hands-off approach, that means that business owners can do pretty much what they want to maximize their profits as much as they want. The growth of steel and oil industry. Two critical industries that epitomized industrial growth during the industrialization were the steel and oil industry. The Bessemer process revolutionized the steel production, making it cheaper and more efficient, while the discovery of oil and the establishment of oil refineries transformed the energy sector, with Standard Oil becoming a dominant force. The Sherman Antitrust Act. Now, we talked about this laissez-faire attitude when it came to government and its ideas about business, where businesses basically were left to their own devices. They could do pretty much anything without being regulated. The first attempt at regulation comes in 1890 with the Sherman Antitrust Act. Now, as monopolies and trusts became more powerful, the U.S. government eventually responded with the Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890, aimed at preventing anti-competitive practices like monopolies and trusts. Though it had limited immediate impact, it marked the beginning of federal efforts to regulate and curb the excesses of industrial monopolies. In other words, for the first time, the government is actually stepping in and not taking the side of the business owners, and is doing something, of course, to make sure that fair competition in the marketplace so that consumers, regular folk, will have a fair shake when it comes to buying particular products, and they won't be at the mercy of the prices that are set by a few industrialized, robber barons like Carnegie, Rockefeller, Jay Gould, and others. All right, Once again, what we also did, of course, that goes along with this brief lesson on the Gilded Age, we gave you facts that you need to make sure that that you master. And once again, these facts, of course, will help you with the background knowledge that you need to understand when it comes to the Gilded Age and allow you a good working background when it comes to taking the map assessment. And remember what we told you at the end of it. Create flashcards. Create these flashcards because they're very important. And what they allow you to do, of course, is to learn a lot of information in a very short time. And you can use your friends, your moms, girlfriends, boyfriends, whoever you want, to help you review. This is Coach Anderson, Mississippi Public Broadcasting Online, U.S. History from 1877 to present. Good luck to you, because that map assessment U.S. history can be a bear if you don't prepare. And I know you will. We'll see you next time from Mississippi Public Broadcasting Online.